The Erebus 7 was humanity's most advanced deep space exploration vessel, a marvel of engineering designed to withstand the harshest conditions of the cosmos. Its mission was simple: to explore the edges of known space and uncover the secrets of the universe. But as the crew of 6 drifted further from Earth, they began to feel the weight of the void pressing down on them. Captain Elena Reyes sat in the dimly lit command center, her eyes fixed on the star map projected on the main screen. The Erebus 7 had been traveling for over 2 years, and the crew was growing restless. The isolation, the endless darkness, the silence, it was getting to them. "Captain," came the voice of Dr. Marcus Hale, the ship's astrophysicist. "We're approaching the coordinates of the anomaly." Elena nodded, her stomach tightening. The anomaly had been detected months ago. A faint, pulsating signal originating from a region of space where nothing should exist. It was unlike anything they had ever encountered, and the scientific community back on Earth had been buzzing with theories. Some called it a natural phenomenon. Others whispered of extraterrestrial intelligence. "Bring us in slowly," Elena ordered. "I want full scans of the area." As the Erebus 7 approached the source of the signal, the crew gathered in the command center, their faces illuminated by the eerie glow of the star map. The anomaly appeared as a swirling mass of darkness, a void within the void. It seemed to absorb the light around it, creating a distortion that made the stars around it flicker and warp. "It's beautiful," whispered Lieutenant Kara Voss, the ship's pilot. "But it feels wrong." Elena couldn't shake the feeling of dread that settled over her. The anomaly was mesmerizing, but it also felt alive, as if it were watching them. She glanced at Dr. Hale, who was furiously analyzing the data. "This isn't natural," he muttered, his voice trembling. "The readings, they don't make sense. It's like the laws of physics don't apply here." Before anyone could respond, the ship's systems began to malfunction. The lights flickered, the engines sputtered, and the scanners went haywire. The crew scrambled to regain control, but it was as if the ship itself was resisting them. "We're being pulled in," Kara shouted, her hands flying over the controls. "I can't break us free." The Erebus 7 was caught in the anomaly's gravitational pull, dragging it closer to the swirling mass of darkness. Elena felt a wave of nausea as the ship shuddered violently, the sound of metal groaning under the strain. "Brace for impact," she yelled. The ship slammed into the anomaly, and everything went black. When Elena regained consciousness, the command center was eerily silent. The lights were dim, and the air felt heavy, as if the ship itself was holding its breath. She groaned, her head throbbing, and pushed herself up from the floor. The rest of the crew was slowly coming to, their faces pale and their eyes wide with fear. "Report," Elena ordered, her voice steady despite the knot of dread in her stomach. "Engines are offline," Kara said, her hands trembling as she scanned the controls. "Life support is stable, but we're not where we were." "What do you mean?" Elena asked, her heart pounding. Dr. Hale pulled up the star map, his face pale. "The anomaly, it didn't just pull us in. It transported us. We're in a completely different region of space. I don't even recognize these stars." Elena's stomach churned. They were lost, adrift in an uncharted part of the cosmos. But that wasn't the worst of it. As she looked out the viewport, she saw something that made her blood run cold. The anomaly was still there. It loomed in the distance, a swirling mass of darkness that seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. But now it was different. It had changed. The edges of the void were sharper, more defined, and within its depths, Elena thought she saw shapes. Moving shadows that twisted and writhed like living things. "We need to get out of here," Kara said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Now." "Agreed," Elena said. "Hale, get the engines back online. Voss, plot a course away from that thing. Everyone else, check the ship for damage." The crew sprang into action, but as they worked, a sense of unease settled over the ship. The air grew colder, and the silence was broken by faint, almost imperceptible whispers. At first, Elena thought it was her imagination, but then she saw the others glancing around, their faces pale. "Do you hear that?" Kara asked, her voice trembling. It's like someone's talking, but I can't make out the words." Elena nodded, her heart racing. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, and she felt a pressure building in her skull, as if something was trying to force its way into her mind. "Ignore it," she said, her voice firm. "Focus on the task at hand." But the whispers didn't stop. They grew louder, more distorted, until they were no longer whispers, but screams, screams of terror, of pain, of madness. Elena clenched her fists, trying to block out the noise, but it was no use. The screams were inside her head, echoing in her mind like a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. "Captain!" Dr. Hale's voice cut through the chaos, pulling Elena back to reality. "The engines are back online, but there's something else." Elena turned to him, her heart pounding. "What is it?" Hale's face was pale, his eyes wide with fear. "The anomaly. It's not just a phenomenon. It's alive, and it's communicating with us." Elena's stomach dropped. "What do you mean, communicating?" Hale pulled up a data feed on the main screen. The readings were chaotic, nonsensical, but as Elena watched, patterns began to emerge. Patterns that resembled language. The anomaly was sending a message, but it wasn't in any language they could understand. It was something older, darker, something that defied comprehension. "We need to leave," Elena said, her voice trembling. "Now!" But as the crew prepared to activate the engines, the ship shuddered violently. The lights flickered, and the whispers turned into a deafening roar. Elena felt a wave of nausea as the pressure in her skull intensified, and she fell to her knees, clutching her head. "It's in my mind!" Kara screamed, her voice filled with terror. "It's inside me!" Elena looked up, her vision blurry, and saw the anomaly growing larger in the viewport. It wasn't just outside the ship anymore. It was inside, seeping into their minds, their souls. The shadows within the void began to take shape, forming grotesque, humanoid figures that reached out with clawed hands. "We're not alone," Dr. Hale whispered, his voice filled with dread. "We never were." The Erebus 7 was no longer a ship. It was a prison, a cage of metal and light trapped within the swirling darkness of the anomaly. The crew huddled in the command center, their faces pale and their eyes wide with terror. The whispers had become screams, the shadows had become monsters, and the void had become a living, breathing entity. "We need to get out of here," Kara shouted, her voice cracking under the strain. "We need to—" Her words were cut off as the ship shuddered violently, the sound of metal groaning under the strain. The lights flickered, and the air grew colder, thicker, as if the void itself was suffocating them. "The engines are offline again," Dr. Hale said, his voice trembling. "It's like the anomaly doesn't want us to leave." Elena clenched her fists, her mind racing. They were trapped, helpless, at the mercy of something they couldn't understand. But she couldn't give up. Not yet. "We need to fight back," she said, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her. "Hale, is there any way to disrupt the anomaly? Anything at all?" Hale hesitated, his eyes darting to the data feed on the main screen. "Maybe. If we overload the ship's core, the resulting energy burst might destabilize the anomaly. But it's a long shot, and it would mean sacrificing the ship," Elena finished, her stomach churning. "And ourselves." The crew fell silent, the weight of the decision pressing down on them. Outside, the shadows grew closer, their grotesque forms twisting and writhing as they reached out with clawed hands. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, filling their minds with visions of madness. Visions of a vast, incomprehensible network of beings that existed beyond the limits of human understanding. "We don't have a choice," Kara said, her voice trembling. "If we don't do something, we're dead anyway." Elena nodded, her heart pounding. "Do it. Hale's hands flew over the controls, his face pale but determined. The ship's core began to hum, the sound growing louder and more intense as it built toward overload. The lights flickered, and the air grew hotter, thicker, as if the ship itself was resisting. 30 seconds, Hale said, his voice barely above a whisper. Elena closed her eyes, her mind racing. She thought of Earth, of the people she had left behind, of the life she would never return to. But she also thought of the anomaly, of the horrors it contained, and she knew they couldn't let it spread. 10 seconds, Hale said. The shadows were inside the ship now, their grotesque forms twisting and writhing as they reached out with clawed hands. The whispers turned into screams. The pressure in Elena's skull intensified, and she felt a wave of nausea as the void closed in around her. 5 seconds. Elena opened her eyes, her heart pounding. For humanity, she whispered. The ship's core reached critical mass, and the Erebus 7 was consumed in a blinding burst of light. The anomaly shuddered, its swirling mass of darkness collapsing in on itself as the energy tore through it. For a moment, there was silence, a perfect, infinite silence, and then there was nothing. Back on Earth, the scientific community mourned the loss of the Erebus 7 and its crew. The anomaly was declared a natural phenomenon, a cosmic curiosity that had claimed the lives of 6 brave explorers. But in the years that followed, strange things began to happen. People reported hearing whispers in the dead of night, seeing shadows move where there should be none. Some claimed to have visions of a vast, incomprehensible network of beings that existed beyond the limits of human understanding. And in the darkest corners of the cosmos, the anomaly waited. It had been weakened, but not destroyed. It was patient. It had all the time in the universe. And humanity would join it, one way or another,